Good evening again. I hope we are doing well, and it's good to see the 32 of us on the call at the moment. So I'll go ahead and introduce the session. This is the second mentorship session, this particular cohort. If you didn't join us for the last one, my name is Hope, and I am usually the host for these sessions. So I'll go ahead straight to the topic and introduce the speaker for today. Thank you. So our topic is becoming an information systems auditor. Just to reference, last week's topic was an introduction to cybersecurity. I think we explored the different areas you can venture into, and information systems auditing is one of them, or generally auditing in general. So with us is Michael Mwangi, who will speak extensively on the topic, and I'll just go ahead and introduce him. So Michael is a dedicated and experienced information systems auditor with over 8 years experience in IT audit, risk management, and cybersecurity. He currently serves as a group information systems audit in one of the major banks in Kenya, where he leads comprehensive audits to ensure the integrity, security, and efficiency of IT systems. So, Michael, karibu sana to Cyber Shujaa Job Hunting and Mentorship. And I'll give it over to you so that you can direct us from there.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Michael, as Hope has mentioned, and today we are going to discuss the field of IS audit, having been in the audit for quite some time. So, for the introduction purposes, I will iterate on what Hope has said. Yeah, I've been in the profession for the last 8 years, and the profession has quite changed since we began this journey of IS audit. It's something that came later compared to other types of audit. So today I hope we are going to impact each and every one of us, and we are going to have quite a discussion, not just one end side. You can ask questions, you can raise your hand, and we will have the discussion with us. So I am planning to display PowerPoint so that we go from one point to the other as we continue with the conversation. Hope that is okay, Hope.
Yes, that is okay.
All right, let me go direct to sharing the screen.
Okay. So, as you share the screen, I think I failed to mention that those in the call are either doing the security analyst course or the cloud and network security provided by Cyber Shujaa. So just that's the background. So this is a new cohort that started beginning of September.
All right, that's noted.
Okay.
Okay, so all right, are you guys able to see? Can you see? Hope?
Yes, I can.
All right, as I've said, my name is Michael Mwangi. I have CPA, CISA, CEH, CCNA, and currently I'm holding CDPP from Cyber Shujaa. I was in the, I think, was it third cohort? I can't remember very well, but I just did that from Cyber Shujaa. So we'll just dig deep in auditing information technology. And for today, we are going to look at the following outline. We're going to define what is internal audit, because IS audit forms part, it's form part of internal audit, but also it has an external audit perspective. when you are doing it. So we also define what is an IS audit. We'll also discuss on why IS audit is different. We'll also look at the scope in IS audit, roadmap to IS audit, important frameworks, feature of IS audit, and finally we'll have a Q&A session. So we'll just go direct to what's an internal audit. Internal audit, as defined by the Institute of Internal Auditors, is an independent, objective, assurance, and consulting activities designed to add value and improve an organization operations. And with that, it helps an organization to accomplish its objective by bringing systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control, governance, and processes. So in a nutshell, the objective of an internal audit is just to add value to the processes, because each day you'll be looking at the processes, looking at the systems, and looking at the structure, policies, procedures, and giving your input as an internal auditor to what more can we do to add value. So your main objective in an organization or in an institute or in any environment where you are and you are an internal auditor is adding value. So underlying adding value to the organization. So that is a definition of internal auditor, where now IS audit was born, or it's actually born. So now let's now dive into IS audit. So information systems audit, others call it IT audit, others call it information systems audit. But for me, for today, based on the principles and frameworks, I will move with ISACA, Information Systems Audit and Control Association, where we define a IS audit as the process of collecting, evaluating evidence to determine whether an organization's information systems safeguard assets, maintain data integrity, and operate effectively to achieve organization goals. That's a definition by ISACA, a body that certifies CISA, CISM, CRISC, and others. So I want to break this down and say, as an IS auditor, what we expect you to do is to have an overview of the organization systems infrastructure. So when you have that overview, you ask yourself, now as an auditor, where can we improve in this? And with now the roadmap that we will look ahead, you'll be able to understand that these are the organization assets, these are the risks that these assets are exposed to, and these are the structures that are there to make sure that these assets are in place with the backing of policies and procedures and people. So with that in mind, you have the environment and the systems are there, and we have the necessary frameworks. Now you are able to look and poke and ask yourself, where do we need to improve now as an internal auditor? Because today perspective is from IS audit, I will mostly look this in an audit eye. So we look it from an audit perspective, not from security perspective, but we can, as we continue, we can actually mention now having the team that is more into security. This is where we look at it, but we can also look on the other side. So as an IS auditor, those are the questions you ask yourself. How can I protect the organization assets? So, and in this, we are looking at the information systems assets. We are looking at the systems that are there, the database that is there, the infrastructure that is there, and the architecture of the IS infrastructure. So that's a definition and an addition of how we define IS audit. So now you might ask yourself now, how is an IS auditor different from other auditors? I have summarized into two ways. I will look at the similarities, because it's also an audit. And as I said at the beginning, for me, I'm an internal auditor, but also the same principles apply when you're an external auditor. You might be working for an audit firm such as KPMG, Deloitte, Ernst and Young, but the same principles will still be applied. So number one, the similarity is objective. The main objective of the audit will always remain the same, adding value to the organization. So the other two is the methodology. the methodologies that we do when you're auditing, you have to do the step-by-step and process of audit, where you have to have the scope of the audit, the same with the other side of the audit, have the requirements, what do you need to do in the field when you're doing the audit. You have to have the objective now of that specific audit. Remember, there's an objective of the audit as a function. There's also an objective of the audit as from IS perspective. And there's also an objective of that specific audit. What exactly do you want to achieve at the end of that specific audit that you're doing? So with the methodology, you'll have to go step by step of doing the audit, which is the same as the other audits. The other one is also the KPI appraisal. When you're being appraised, or when you're appraising yourself, or when you're appraising the department at large, it is still the same. You look, how many audits have you done? How many value adding insights have you given to the organization? How much have you saved for the organization? Those are some of the KPIs that are looked at when we are looking at the audit at large. So now we look at the differences. What are the differences between now an IS audit and other audits? Other audits, sorry, I forgot to mention, we mean maybe compliance audit, financial audit, process audit from now control perspective, from now other audits in an internal audit department. So now one of them is the scope. The scope have to be different. Although the processes of doing this are similar, the scope is different. Like, we don't expect a financial auditor to be looking at the database, to be looking at the vulnerabilities that are in the database. So the scope will be different. Number two is the technicality of these audits. So we definitely expect an IS audit being a technical area. The technicalities is different, because now you need to understand the system that you're auditing, because now you can't just audit a system or the environment, and understanding that environment, that you have a different view and knowledge and skills and experience on handling that kind of audit. So the technicality here comes different, because also the next part is the skills. Which skills do we need now in IS audit? Number one, you ought to know a little bit about the networks. You need to know about the system. You need to know about the tools that you need to use during this audit, and general knowledge of an audit. So skill set for an IT auditor is different from a skill of a financial auditor, operation auditor, credit auditor. That's where it gets to be different. So now we'll now get into scope of IS audits. Now that we are talking about this IS audit, what exactly am I expected to do when I'm now given that title of an IS auditor? So I've separated these areas into 10 areas, but different frameworks, different people have defined them differently. From my perspective and from my research and from my experience, these are the areas that we categorize from this type of audit. So number one, we look at the IT general controls. Previously, before evolution, or I'll call it evolution of IT audits, it used to be called general control, because that's exactly what most IT auditors were doing back in 90s, early 2000s, and when we were joining these types of audits. So mostly what used to happen is just looking at the governance. The governance, you're looking at how is this IT audit aligning to the objective or to the business objective of organization. We used to look at the policies. Now, when you're auditing policy, you just read policy, you check now the implementation of this policy. If, like, for example, BOID, bring your device policy, like, you're not supposed, if the organization says you are not supposed to come with your machines unless some check are done, you look at, is this done? So those kind of things. You also look at the procedures of doing something, maybe an incidents management. You look at step by step, is it followed? And if it's followed, where is the evidence that this is actually done? And definitely the overall controls. So the scope of this used to be IT management. You look at the management itself. How is it structured? Do we have people having the segregation of duties, is it there when the management is there? Do we have somebody working on a live environment, and at the same time that person is also the one who is doing the test environment? Does that person have the both controls? Because now you can imagine a situation where somebody is, we have entrusted a person to do a UAT, and the same person is the one who is driving those UAT testing to production. So some of those things that the one that we look at when you check those controls. So the other type of audit is application control audits. Here you look at the key security areas, which we call CIA, where we talk about confidentiality, we talk about integrity, and authorization or authentication. Sorry for that. So when you're looking at this in this system, let's say like you have a credit system, you have a system or a module in an ERP system or account banking system that has a credit. You look at now in that system, you look how is data input done. Do we have a monitoring of this data input? Have we allowed everybody to do that? And how do we control how we do input of that data? So in the processing of data, we look at how is this data processed. Remember, there is business aspect of this. There is a business in an organization. There is business team. Business define how business is going to be conducted. Example, we can decide now today our loans are going to be at 17%, and yesterday they were around 16%. How will we implement that? So that is the processing of it. And how is this system is this system processing that? So you also need to check at the output. After the processing now, what do we get? Is the output in line with what was expected by the business? And then you look at the authorization. Who are these people who are supposed to do these processes? Are they authorized? Is it in line with what is required of them? Are their qualification in line with the requirements? Then we look at the authentication. This is where we look at how are we authenticating people in these systems? Do we have a two-factor authenticator? Do we just have a password? And how is this asset that you are talking about? Does it really need two-factor authentication? And what is the risk? Then we also look at the transaction processing. Now is looking at the whole process. This loan we are saying, is it going end to end as required? And at the same time, is it processing the required period? Like if we expect this to be done in 2 minutes, is it taking those 2 minutes or it's taking 30 minutes? Now you can imagine in a bank situation where a transaction is going for 30 minutes uh, without sorting the customer, that will be a disaster. So the other type of audit, we look at system development audits. This is where now you follow the system development life cycle. Now for the developers here, you work with the developers. The process of developing, where we have the development itself, the testing, the documentation, the project management, and the post-implementation review. So you review system from the time of initiation of the project up to the end of the project. You look the planning of that project. Did it follow the required timelines, the budgets, and the team that composes that team? Are those areas considered when this project was done? And if the project overran the budget, what did the management advise? What was it? What caused that? So that now when you are devising, remember the objective is to add value to the organization. So at back in your mind, you are advising in the future, such project should be, now you recommend it should be done with this way because you have evaluated and looked at the project has taken so long, or the project has taken a lot of finance budget. So you look at those aspects. The other type of audit, we call it infrastructure audit. This is also called, so in some aspect, you will see it being called technical stroke infrastructure audits. This type of audit focuses on the technical aspect of the IT environment. This is where we look at the hardware, networks, and databases. Hardware here we mean now the assets themselves. Now here we look at the data center itself. How is it structured? How are storage facilities? How are our databases? How are these database stored? Do we have a policy that support that? So we look at the network security. Who can access the security? What are the configuration do we have? What are security layers do we have? Do you have firewall? Do you have all the types of firewall, such as web application firewall. We have network firewall. Do you have a demilitarized zone where certain traffic can only be allowed at that area? So in this, we look at network security, server configuration, firewall policies, and vulnerability assessment for those areas. So the other one, we also look at operations audit. So this is where you review day-to-day operation. Remember, there's that thin line between operation and IT, because at the end of the day, the work of the IT department or the IT function is to support the operations of the organization. So here you look at the incident response. Incidents when it is raised, how is it responded? Do we have a system that actually communicate about the incidences uh, that we are receiving? And if you receive, you evaluate those incidences. Like, let's say for this year, you look at those incidences and you analyze them. Which were the most conspicuous incidences? What do they say about the organization? And then you can recommend in regard to that. In terms of monitoring, you look, how do we monitor? Which asset do we need to monitor? Do we have a high risk area that need to have a continuous monitoring? You look at the tools that are being implemented for monitoring, and you evaluate those reports for monitoring. And you can also do the same in a test environment to test whether these monitoring are done. You also look at the performance management. How do we look at the performance of the staff, not just staff, also the vendors or the third parties that we engage? Do we do risk assessment to these vendors? And yes, do they qualify to be our vendors? How often do we review these vendors? Then you also look at the service level agreements. These are tenders that we give to the vendors. How do we agree? How do we decide that this is the vendor that we need to go on in delivering the service that we need in the IT environment? And as you do that, you evaluate whether do we what is the relationship between us and with the vendor? What are the expected performance? Do they give us the report? And after the report, if an incident happen, what are the requirements of these vendors? So you look that. Then the other ones, we look at the compliance audit. This is where you look at the do the organization comply with the requirement, depending on the environment, because there are various fields, there are various areas of audit. There are banks, there are insurance companies, we have manufacturing companies. It all depends. So you look at the regulatory frameworks, the ones that are required by the government or regulatory bodies, the ones that are required by professions, the ones that are required by, for example, Central Bank of Kenya for banks, such as GDPR for the data protection, which is now the current thing that is everybody is looking at. We look at the SOX, we look at HIPAA, we look PCI DCSS, and other standards and policies. So the other type of audit is cybersecurity audit. This is where now we examine the security measures in place to protect the organization, IT assets from cyber threats. This is where now we talk about penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, intrusion detection, and response system. In this aspect, this is where your certification in ethical hacking comes in, because you need to understand how various tools work so that you can now test whether the penetration is possible in your environment. For example, let's say you want to assess whether you can just getting somebody credentials. What do? You try to use the phishing aspect of vulnerability and penetration testing. You send a form where you tell a staff in a certain department or in a certain branch, you tell them to input their credentials because something want to be confirmed maybe by their seniors. So once they do that, you're able to gain their credentials. So you can get inside and actually perform an act. Then you're able to prove that actually we have gaps in those areas. So there are very many tools in that which you can use. We have Nmap, we have Nessus, we have for those are for web application reviews, and for network we have the likes of Wiresharks. And so we also look at data integrity audit, which now combine these to data protection areas. to ensure that there is accuracy, completeness, and reliability of data processed by IT system. This integrates with the requirements by the data protection requirements. So in this way, you do data validation, you do consistent checks and controls over the data inputs and outputs. The other one is disaster recovery as business continuity audit. This is where you review the organization disaster recovery and business continuity plan capability. This is where you ask yourself, if something happened today in your organization, let's say a malware gets in and everything is compromised, how are you able to continue operating? So you need to assure the management and the stakeholders that the institution that you're working on, it has a capability of running in case something of that happens. And you can only do this by now testing these areas. You have scenarios where you do this testing, and now you can be able to inform the management that we are prepared up to this extent. So that comes with backup and recovery procedures. You check whether we have current backup, how much data are we ready to use, and how much will it cost us to lose that data. Then management can now sit down and say, wow, in 5 minutes we lose this amount of money. Are we ready to lose that? If yes, then the acceptance of that risk is there. So you look at that. You also look at the offsite storage, the business continuity plans that are there, and the testing results that are done. And the other one is the cloud computing audit. This is where you review the use of cloud services, including the security, the governance. Remember, in cloud computing is where we are now saying, let's move this operation in a cloud, maybe provided by AWS and other vendors out there. So how are you able to assure the organization that now that the resources, the computing processes are on the cloud, how you are assuring the organization that as we put our information out there to this vendor or to this organization that is offering these services, how sure are we that our operation will not be halted, our data is not being leaked out? So you now as an IS auditor, it is your responsibility to give the assurance that this is the level of compliance we have when we are dealing with this vendor. And the scope of this will be the architecture of the cloud, the storage, the access control, and that party vendor management. And the last from my list is digital and mobile audit. This is this is where you evaluate digital channels. This is like the mobile banking, the e-commerce platform, and social media usage. The scope on this is mobile security. Now, because now as business grow, as technology grows, we have to accept that mobile phones and the mobile mobility is necessary for many. People want to be accessing their resources at any point, at anywhere in this world. So we have to dive in these mobile reviews and assure organizations that these channels are compatible with these mobile devices. They are secure when you are running these applications in these mobile phones. So this, you look at the security. Now, here we are talking about, from an organization perspective, we are looking at the application itself. How secure is it when it is being launched to the client? Now the client here being the customer. So we look at the digital authentication, user access, and privacy, because privacy is a big thing currently. So from there, we now move to the other area of roadmap to IS audit. This is a big question. Now, you ask yourself, how now do I become an IS auditor? IS auditor is not taught in campus. It was not taught back then in high school. So you just find yourself seeing these IS auditors, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know where you want to go. So number one, I have highlighted that you need to understand the basics. The basics being you yourself as a person. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to do? And as young as you can, this is where now you sit down and evaluate yourself and ask yourself, where do I fit? Because in this field, you have, first of all, you have to be a person who need to keep learning. You have to have passionate about doing this, because this is not just something that you just enter into. It's something that you get into there and keep learning with it, keep learning things, because things keep changing and these things keep advancing. So the basics for me, it's about yourself. How passionate are you? And This will be formed by the kind of research that you can do yourself. Do as many research as you can. Now, with this research, sit down and especially for those people with IT background, there are very many areas you can join. We have also IT risk, which is closely related to this. We also have other types of such as other types of audits. You can be a red hat person where you sit back in IS, information security, where you now do this from management perspective. You're now the manager. We have given you the mandate to implement these things that this IS auditor is reviewing. So these are areas that you need to identify before you can dig deep into now deciding that I'm an IS auditor and this is the field that ask yourself where you see, do your research, ask yourself, where do I really fit into? So that is now where you do basics on yourself. This is the question you ask yourself, where you want to do and what you want to do with your life. So then we go to essential. Let's say you have decided now, I want to get into IT audit. Number one, you need to understand audit. Audit explain how is audit conducted. You need to understand the process of audit. You need to understand, number one, that audit, you need to know the environment. You need to see the organization that you're working at a high level. You say this is how it is, and the process of audit is where you have to have a planning. You have to have the annual planning of the audit, and you need to know those processes where you have the planning. After planning, you have to have the audits of the year, of that year that you are working with. Then you have to specifically decide what are the high risk areas. This, remember, this will be informed by risk assessment. There's a whole topic on risk assessment where you do risk of the organization and decide this is the high risk. So with the high risk, maybe those are the one that you do as a priority. But remember, there is also management, there is also stakeholders. They will want other areas to be looked into. So you have to come and plan those types of audits at the end of the year. So those are the essentials. Again, you also need to, number one, for IS audit, I feel, and the way it's going, you need to understand the networking. For me, the networking, I mean the networks. You have to have basics on network because most of these things they will keep referring back to networks. So some courses, some basic courses such as CCNA, they can be your starting point. Also, you can now use your the IT degree or diploma or certificate that you did back in O level. You can implement this side as at this level. Now, with your background of basics of understanding what is an audit, basic of understanding what is a network, basic of understanding what is an IS audit, that is essential for me. Then from there, you can get into specialization. Now, here in specialization, this is where you now decide. Uh, it is now IS audit. And in IS audit, one of the area that I would recommend and that is necessary, it's a course such as CSER or a course it is that level. Because with CSER, it will give you a roadmap on what do I expect in the field, what is expected of me, what are these processes of auditing. You can get these processes in CSER, and I also believe with CIA, for those who are not from IT area, CIA has defined with IPPF, they have really defined this process of audit, but not IS audit. So CSER here comes in where you are able to understand what is expected of me, what areas do I review, how do I review them. So this is where you specialize on that. You can also do CISM for risk to understand more into IS risk, the C risk, also all those are offered by Isaaca. So with that, now you go into continuous running. So in continuous running, this is where now inside IS audit, you might decide now, I want to be an IS auditor, but I want to do, mine will be just doing vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. You just want to give an assurance of the security aspect of the organization from ethical hacking part of it. So this is where now you can dig deep and do something like certified ethical hacking, where your day-to-day work will be coming and planning on how you can try to penetrate. You definitely do it ethically. You have to involve the management. You have to involve your team. and now prepare that, and then you can be able to offer the posture of the security posture of the organization to the management, and you're telling them, look, this is how we look now, and these are the vulnerabilities, and these is all areas you need to address ASAP if they are high risk at that point. And with continuous running, you can now even divert to anything else. You can even go to, you can now decide to do data protection, which is a new thing right now, or you can just stick to security. Security, there are many fields you can look into. You can do CISSP, which will assist you in developing those skills. So my last three would be, you focus on that area and you become so good in it that you can actually do an end-to-end, because remember, IT or information system is a very wide area, and it's continuing to grow, and new areas are emerging. So you identify area where you feel you are now comfortable. So with that area, you specialize on it, and you keep learning, you keep relearning, and keep doing your research each day. Each time you get something new, just focus on that and you improve yourself. So that for me would be the roadmap to being an IS audit. So with now you're an IS auditor, which frameworks would you consider? So for me, the five uh, frameworks that I consider very important. Number one is IPPF. This is for internal auditors, but if you're an external auditor, it is still not, it's still applicable, but uh, this is more of the internal auditors. IPPF mostly is for the internal auditors, because it will give you a background, or it give you a foundation on how audit is done, what is expected is as an internal auditor, because this CISA doesn't define specific what is expected of an internal auditor from an audit perspective in a department. IPPA will still guide you on the process of audit, because the process of auditing will always be defined in IPPA for the internal auditors. Number two is the COBIT frameworks. These are given by ISACA. And number three is NIST framework. This is mostly widely used because of its connection to America. Then there is ISO 27002, and we have PCI DCSS for credit card protection for those people who deal with the credit cards, especially in banking environment. So now, last but not least, from my side, I look at the emerging trend. What are these areas that are emerging right now on IS audits? We look at the continuous audits. Nowadays, many organizations are considering having continuous audits. This is where the automation is getting into audits, where if you need something ASAP, you need now to understand, like, for example, you need to understand how did business perform today, right now. You have a script, or you have a, a system where you have already predefined the conditions that are needed, and the system will just run in the script will just run in the system, and you'll get the result on what you want right now. Instead of now start extracting data, start doing analysis and deciding this and this, continuous audit is becoming a bigger thing in IS audits. Number two is artificial intelligence and AI machine learning audits. This is where we are integrating AI into audits so that we can now have more productive outputs from audits, and we now have results that are more result oriented and faster results. We also have in data science aspect is getting into audit. Number four is Number four, I think that was repeated in number two. Number five is robotic processes automation. You need now to be, how, if you're in an environment where robotics processing and automation is being integrated, how do you, as an IS audit, how do you become useful? How do you do your audit? So that's also an emerging areas. And number six, we also having sustainability and green IT audits. This is the new thing in sustainability. Now the world is going to green. The other area is quantum computing and readiness audits. This is now the improvement in computing world, where we are now moving quantum computing. How do IS audit relate to that? Also, there is remote work and digital workspace audits, and lastly, blockchain and enabled audit trails. So for me, that's what I prepared for you. It's quite a broad topic which can continue discussing, because we can deep into one area and talk about it, but that's what I prepared for you. and I'll take it back to the moderator so that now we can get in question and answer forum.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael, for that. I think that was really extensive on auditing, IS auditing specific. So I see hands are already up. So I'll go ahead and let Collins go on with the first question.
Thank you so much, Hope and Tishon. Good evening, everyone. My question revolves around AI. Given that now when conducting assessments and risk audits, could you have like a guideline or a template on the documentation needed um, on how to request these audits? Like when you're pitching a company now, for example, you want to request for permission or you want them to bring you in for services to conduct assessment. Could you have a guideline on how to to do that? Because I believe that's where the challenge. Thank you so much.
This is Collins. Hi Collins. So from my understanding, you're asking for the guidelines of conducting an AI audit, right?
Yes, I am.
So in this aspect, as I try to understand, is it you using AI or is it you auditing the AI?
In regards to both, because I'm approaching it from a point of companies using
All right.
AI to onboard some of their services.
Okay.
So when they bring you in, what they expect from you is to maybe help them understand what services to onboard and how AI is going to be effective as opposed to a normal way of doing it.
All right. Okay, that's okay. Okay. As I started, I mentioned that remember your work is to give an assurance to the organization. So number one, the processes and the principles of the organization in terms of handling the business on how if it's a service they on board, that is not your work. That is actually the business side of work. So business must come up with a process that this is how we onboard our service. And you go to number one, we do this. Number two, we do this. So you as an IS auditor, you have to look at those processes and assume now you are new to an organization that uses an AI to onboard services to its platform or to its environment. So what you need to look at, what are the procedures of these processes? And remember, you don't prepare these procedures. These procedures ought to be there because in the first place, if these processes or the procedures or the step-by-step of doing these are not there, that's an issue by itself. And the only thing you can do is a recommendation on how to onboard, on how on number one, not how to onboard, it's on requiring the business to have those procedures because you cannot involve yourself with the business because your work is specifically to look at those processes and procedures and give an assurance or give a recommendation on improvement of the services. I don't know whether I'm clear, Mr. Collins.
Yes, we are clear on that.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is Coffee, Emmanuel.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I wanted to highlight on a particular aspect of your talk. You talked about specialization, and I wanted to ask more specifically on cloud computing audit,
Yes.
what that roadmap looks like. And okay, as far as I know, there's no particular certification on cloud computing audit, unless can you shed further light on that kindly?
All right. Okay. On cloud computing, we are looking at of auditing. You as an IS auditor of the organization. And remember, nowadays, organizations are picking cloud services where their computing resources are given by a provider. Now, number one, you as an auditor, you need to understand. It will start with the SLA. What is the agreement between us and the organization? And one of the requirements that I know is that they ought to be audited first by an external auditor or an external party where they give their results to you. So with that, that is the starting point of now evaluating them. And again, we also have tools which you need to be accustomed with that you can use actually to give an assurance for the sorry, I'm losing this. For the cloud computing audit. So you need first of all to understand the cloud computing architecture and governance that is there. But these will definitely be provided by the organization that is giving you these services. Number one, you also need, after you check the architecture and governance, and you are looking at, now you have specialized, so you understand how cloud architecture is. If it's like AWS, you understand how it works. So you need to look at the review, the design, the best practices where they are there, and their adherence to the governance and the structure. So you also need to look at the security posture of that cloud computing environment. How is it? How is access management given? Do they review, and how, when they are reviewed, have they given you as an organization to, because I think it's a requirement, it should be a requirement where you are able to do an audit to the third party service provider, where you can do just like other audits that we are talking about here, where you can do vulnerability assessment to their environment, compliance to regulatory, operation and monitoring. How do they monitor our services? How do they monitor our resources? And how are our resources being managed? Are we put under one basket with other customers? And if yes, is there compromise in terms of if it's a storage? Is there compromise on security? Is there compromise on the CIA triad? So that is one way you can approach cloud computing environment, but it has to start with now the governance of the provider, and also the SLA agreement between your organization and the other organization. So for the course that you can do, definitely I'm also in the lookout for the audit for the certification in that. But you can do a certification in those areas such as the AWS and other cloud computing, because once you understand how the architecture is and how it works, it gets easier for you to now do the audit, because definitely the audit is looking at those areas we are talking about. So with that kind of foundation and background, you will now be able to build in terms of auditing this environment. Back to you.
Okay, so Deborah.
Okay, hi everyone. So I had a question according to cybersecurity auditor. I think you said they do penetration testing and vulnerability assessment. So I was asking what's the difference between a cybersecurity analyst and a cybersecurity auditor? And if there is a difference,
Yes.
can an organization have both a cybersecurity analyst and a cybersecurity auditor? And maybe when going to look for a job, does the qualifications of a cybersecurity analyst and a cybersecurity auditor have a big difference, or it's the same?
All right. Now, cybersecurity analyst and cybersecurity auditor. As I mentioned, here we are talking about two different professions, although they are related. Let's say they are related because remember, an IS auditor is an auditor. Let's begin with that. They work in that line defense where we have the management, we have the risk component, and then we have number three, the audit. So IS auditor is number three. And the main objective of an IS auditor is to give an assurance of the posture of the organization security when you're now looking at the security aspect of the audit. So when you have an analyst, this is what they do every day. Now they evaluate the security. Now from the manager aspect, they are the one who, we have the IT department implementing the security, the firewall, the WAF, the EDR, the disaster management tools and everything. So now the analyst will now analyze at a given point. We have invested in this system. We have installed this system. What are the securities vulnerabilities that are there? So on the ground, when you're conducting this assessment, the analyst, at the same time you do your vulnerability assessment. But remember him, he's doing as a management. You are doing as an auditor for the assurance. You might end up doing the same thing, more like the same, but for you are doing in a structured way. You have audit that had been planned. Remember, you did an audit plan at the beginning of the year, and others do it in the previous year. You planned at a specific time in the year, you will do a vulnerability assessment. But for these analysts, this is what they do every day. Remember, there are other types of audits, such as evaluating the vendors, looking at your databases, looking at the looking at other aspects of the audit, such as network audit. But this cybersecurity analyst, you're looking at the security posture at the end of the day. And for the job now, for the job aspect, it depends, as I said, with what yourself you feel you can do. As an analyst, it will be easier for you to transition to audit because you just need to do maybe Caesar or some other aspect that teach you now. You have the skills of doing security aspect of the IS audit, because that is another area of IS audit, because there are also other areas that are not covered by the IT people. So you just need to fill that gap and you can actually move on that side. But when you're an IS auditor, it get now easier for you to be a cybersecurity analyst. So you, as an IS auditor, I know and I feel like you can actually be an analyst if you feel that you want to change that line. So that is why how I would respond to that aspect of your question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sylvanus, then Favor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, I had a question. I have a question on cybersecurity audit and infrastructure audit together with the application control auditor. Based on the scope, I can see they have almost the same thing like cybersec. We can see we have a pen test, vulnerability management, intrusion detections, application control. We also have data input, is like data input validation, output integrity, and also in infrastructure audit. We also have network security, server configs, IDSs, and firewall policies or such. So as a student or an IT practitioner who want to major on web application and network security, with a bit of cloud knowledge, what kind of knowledge or what kind of path or security certification that I can pursue to improve and or validate my skills?
All right.
Or any other recommendation that you can give?
All right. Thank you for your question, and I think you mentioned infrastructure audit. Was it infrastructure, cybersecurity, and data integrity? Looking almost the same, right?
Application control, cybersec, and infrastructure, where I was talking about measuring on network security.
All right.
Or where
web application.
Yes, because cybersec audit is where pen test, we can pen test network or web application or something, or servers.
Exactly.
Or,
yeah, I get you. All right, I get your question now. I think you're on the right path. So and after that, I think you are looking at what you can do to now feel you're comfortable on operating those sides of web application and network security. Number one, I would recommend, I'll not be specific on what certification you can do, but I give what I feel it can assist. So number one, you would need to understand how web application works before you can audit them. And as I mentioned before, we are talking about traffic flow and the assets that are in the environment of the organization that you're looking at. On the web application, the same with the network security. At a basic level, you need to have done some basic courses such as CCNA, because CCNA will give you at a basic level understanding of the OSI level, understanding of the protocols, understanding of how these protocols relate to, and understand how these protocols are managed in an OSI model. That is a basic level of understanding how networks usually works. So now, going further now, what certification from a cloud field, and you want also to dive into web application and network security, you can get into another course such as CSSP. CSSP is offered by IS2, which is a body that course for me, it looks more structured in preparing somebody to dive into this. But then after that, you also need to know now, how can I do this vulnerability assessment and penetration test? That is where a course like CH comes in, because you might have knowledge of understanding how web application work, how network security works, what protocols they are there, what vulnerability should be there. But how do you get those vulnerabilities? How do you get inside? How do you use how do you use those vulnerability assessment results to now get into those systems, which we call now penetration testing? How do you take advantage of those gaps that are there in organization? You need to do a course such as CH, which will now give you a gist on some of the tools such as Nmap, such as Nessus, such an OpenVerse, on how you can now dive into this system and actually exploit them. At that level, I feel you'll have accomplished your goal of being a cybersec person. Back to you, Hope.
Yeah, I hope your question was answered. There was a lady's hand after Sylvana's. There's a lady with a call, I think Francesca or something. Okay. Okay, we'll go on to Gerald and then Newton.
Hello, Mike.
Hi.
My name is Gerald. Apparently, I'm not in the team of Cyber Shuja, but I follow you guys on LinkedIn, and that's why I got a notification. But here's the thing. I'm coming from a malware perspective, and
All right.
when you talked about specialization in this
Yes.
audit thing,
All right.
can I specialize mainly on malware auditing? This is testing for presence of TTPs and any malicious software in an enterprise environment. Can I just do that like as a specialization?
All right. Yeah. Yes. No. Number one, why would I say yes? Because it's an area where you'll be specialized on looking at malwares and how malwares are dangerous, and now you are able to advise the organization on the mitigation they should take. But look at our country now. Assume you only look into that only, and you say you are an IS auditor. So I would say this, unless you are looking at another market, because right now I feel from my experience that an IS auditor is given too many responsibilities in each organization that sometimes you feel you're somehow lost. Because remember, you're supposed to do all these things that I mentioned here, but at the end of the day, you can actually minimize and specialize in one. And I say yes, you can do that, but after you do that, remember you'll be expected to do other areas. You ask yourself now, when you're in an interview setup, you'll be asked, can you do this, can you do that, can you do this? So I would say you look at a high level, then after you identify somewhere you can actually specialize on that, then you get into that. But remember, there are also organizations in Kenya, which are not so many, that give those specialized jobs where you can actually be looking at malware, because I know such that do that. So yes, you can do that, and it's practical and it's actually recommended, because now you'll be a domain person who in and out is your work is only evaluating malware and giving recommendation to the organization on how to address those malwares. So yes, it's doable, but as you think about that, look about your career progression and how the organization will perceive you as you present yourself as a malware handler. So that's what I would say. Look at your profession, but if it's passion, yes, you have to do it because you feel that is where you belong, but also look at how your profession will now take you along the way. Because remember, you can actually do it for long, then realize there's other aspect that I need to do. Back to you, Gerard.
Okay, I understand. Yes, I understand. I understand your point. I understand from the perspective from which you're talking from, and I think we're good to go on. So I'll first look for a niche before I start even looking into malware. I mean, before I start
Yeah,
specializing into malware. Yeah, I
yeah,
think I have to find a place where I should start, right?
yeah. So and it's apply for everyone. Before you can now decide now, I want to be a malware, or I want to be a pen tester, or I want to be uh you just want to be evaluating cloud. Just look at market. What is the market telling you? How is it possible for me to find a job? And if definitely you are looking at your future, you need to start somewhere. You feel that this is where I'm comfortable for now. Learn, because you can only improve after understanding how these things work. So start somewhere, then decide specifically this is what I want to do. Do something, maybe let's say if you're new to the field, just call yourself an IS audit, do all these types of audits. Then as you go on, decide on which area do I want to specialize on. Because even now, even somebody like me right now, I'm also deciding now. Now I've been doing this for quite some time. This is where I feel I'm comfortable. So I think you need time and you need to address your needs according to where you feel you belong.
Thank you so much, Mike. I think I understand it.
Okay, Newton, and then the last question from Tony.
Okay, thank you. Mike, there's something you mentioned regarding privacy audit, and I just wanted to
Come again?
there's something you mentioned regarding privacy
Yes.
audit, data privacy, and
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can share maybe some scope
Right.
on what that entails.
All right. On privacy. All right.
I mean, yes, privacy.
This is where I mentioned about data integrity audit. It's more to do with data protection audit. And there's a whole, from data protection notes or from data protection perspective. Remember, that's also another area you can specialize with. But it doesn't mean you have to be a specialized data protection officer to do these types of work. This is expected of you from internal audit perspective. So you need to have the scope of your review. Remember, you can be reviewing the organization at large to see the compliance aspect. You can be reviewing a specific system to see whether it's complying. So it's all deep down to what exactly is your scope, because that has to be defined by you or the organization, because you understand the privacy is wide, and the privacy aspect of data protection has many areas of review. You can be reviewing the compliance of data protection to the organization. You can be reviewing a system compliance to data privacy, uh, uh, data privacy policy as defined by the organization. So those have to be defined at the point of doing that audit. But there's a general scope of how you can tackle that if you're looking at the organization wise, and that I can share with you. Hope can give you my email, and we can have more discussion on that. Back to you,
Okay,
Gerard.
thank you.
Gerard? All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
Please,
Tony. I see the one who's supposed to go before me is a bit quiet, so I think I should go. Yeah, so I was just curious. I don't know if you shared. I joined some 5 minutes later. What was your journey professionally and academic-wise
All right.
up to the place that you arrived, and what are you looking forward to? And do you think there's a big future, especially in Kenya, for cybersec and the security that you're doing? So just share so that we can also relate to it. And are you open to mentorship?
Yeah, I'm actually open. But let me tackle your question. And yes, thank you for asking that question. I didn't dig deep into my journey, but I'm okay to share. So for me, I actually started this journey with then we didn't even have mentors who can tell you now IS audit. So I would say I didn't know that this is where I would be today in IS audit, but I was just trying things. I was curious with things. So me finishing, I will start with high school. Finishing high school, I just decided no, I'm not going to waste my time. I joined accounting. I was doing accounting CPA, which is called CPA. So it is CPA, the CPA parts, the part one, part two, part and three, and that's why I encountered this audit, and I was curious, what is it about? Because I never had audit in high school, and it was so amazing that you just look. I thought an auditor in an organization is like a police, and I just felt like I feel like I want to be a police. So then comes those times where we had job where you join university, and I joined university, did computer science, and in my journey with computer science, I realized there were very many areas. I could be a developer, I could be a network person, I could be a network, all those areas, but I still stuck with this aspect of audit. Then in my final year, I remember there was a unit called information system audit. Then I remember that audit that I did back then during my certification in CPA. So I decided this area look amazing, and I would really want to venture into it. So I really concentrated on it. And then after now, the campus here come life, and I thought I would be an auditor, an IS auditor. But actually, it was not an IS auditor. I thought I would be an auditor because that is what I was looking for. So now, to my surprise, the first area that I did, I was taken to sales. I was selling bank accounts somewhere, and I thought now this is too much for me. So after some time, I decided to quit, and life was quite tough after that. But then with consistency, continuous learning, then the internet was now booming, and I just got into online learning things here and there from tutorials. Then I decided that this IS audit was the best for me. So now I got somewhere, I joined an organization where I was doing audits. I was scared because I was not mentored by anybody. So some hard questions were very difficult for me to do because, like, assume you just there, somebody tells you now tomorrow we need to do a review of the disaster recovery, and then this is the first time you get that time. So it was a kind of hard learning. So, but then after that, then Caesar came. It was advertising itself everywhere. I did Caesar, so I gained some confidence. Then from that, I had to learn the networking that I had done in campus. So I did CCNA in that. So I got now a better understanding of how internet works, how now traffic flows, what are the protocols, what do these protocols stand, which protocols do we need, this layer of the OSI model. So it became easier for me. Then with time, I decided to do now Caesar, which now showed me the roadmap of now becoming an exactly IS auditor in any organization. Then after that, I decided now that was not enough. I needed to dig deep into, now I wanted to do vulnerability assessments and such. So I dived into CEH, which until now I'm using to do those tests for the organization. And definitely you have to keep learning from various platforms. There are Isaac seminars, there are cybersecurity everywhere, in LinkedIn, in YouTube, they are there. Free trainings, I make use of them. I learn from my colleagues. We have friends there, they came with big question, they ask you, how do you address this? So that's how you keep learning. So for me, that is my roadmap, and I'm still on it. I'm still doing other things. I'm still going into it. And about the future, yes, if you look at just simple statistics of how we are being attacked as a continent, not just even Kenya, it tells you our organization will definitely want to be protected, and you from your skill set, you will definitely be needed. And I can tell you, I can assure you right now, even right now as we talk, we don't have enough IS auditors in this country, especially this Kenya. If you are well equipped, if you really know about what you're doing and you're able to express that to these many employers, definitely you get somewhere, and the future is bright, and there's an opportunity in IS audit. So that's what I would say for me. And yes, continue learning, continue exploring more. There are also other aspects of addressing the security aspects in any area that you are operating on, because in future now it will be like a requirement, because even the institution, the government frameworks, they are requiring organization to have these auditors. They are requiring to have this audit be done. They may not say direct that you need to hire somebody to do it, but definitely they need a long-term person where they are doing it. So there's future in it, and I would recommend anybody any day, even at this level, to just dive into IS audit. And you can even have your own consultancy firm, because this knowledge is not everywhere. And you remember the kind of generation we are working with, these people who are in this senior management, during their time these things were not there, so they need us. And yes, you have a space and a place for this.
What about mentorship? Are you open for
Yeah,
mentorship?
mentorship, yeah, definitely, yeah, I'm open to that. This knowledge
How
need to
can
be
you?
shared, because someday in future I'll definitely live around. I retire or I will die. I need somebody to continue having the same spirit of the professionalism that we are developing. So yeah, any day we can have discussion at any point. So yeah, I'm open to that.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I'll reach out.
All right, no problem.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'll take the last question from Favor because she had her hand up before. Favor, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I had dropped because of connectivity issues. So my question is, they in a corporate setting, there are people who say they do QA, quality assurance, and quality engineering. Now, I wanted to actually know if these professions overlap with IS. If yes, why IS? And if no, how?
All right, that's a very nice question, because now remember we mentioned that an organization has three levels. The first level is the management, the second level is assurance, which is risk assurance, and then we have the audit. Remember, the IS auditor is not giving that kind of assurance that we are talking about here. So like let's talk about a system that is being implemented or being developed in an organization. Let's say it's an ERP system. The quality assurance, that specialist in quality assurance is the one that now tells the management, go ahead and implement that. The system is okay. But that has nothing to do with an IS auditor. The only aspect that more like the same is that the process that he will input there to give that an assurance may be the same process that the IS auditor will do. And remember, the IS auditor may not do it during the time of implementation. They might do it post implementation or after a certain module has been done. But the quality assurance move together with the developers, giving an assurance that at this stage, this is done and this is how it's done. And then that assurance is now picked up for decision-making process. So this type of assurance is different from this assurance of an IS auditor. The assurance of the engineer, the quality engineer, the quality engineer comes in telling the management that the quality that we had defined before the initiation of this project it's at this level, or they have complied. Now, you as an IS auditor, you come back, you look at what had they recommended, what was done, and what is on the ground. So that is how they might overlap, but it doesn't take any other, because they are both needed. Because remember, an IS auditor will have their plan, a quality assurance person will just be there doing quality assurance year in out. IS auditor have their audit plan for the year. Right now, I may not be doing quality assurance for something. And remember, there's also the risk person. We also have an IT risk, which is also more closely to audit, but they operate at the second level of the management. So there's no overlap, only that the assurance is given at different levels as required by the management.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Favor. So I'll give it back to you, Michael, closing remarks, and then I can close the session.
All right. I want to thank every and each of you for giving me this opportunity to share little knowledge on this field. And I would say it's an exciting field, which I would reiterate again that I would recommend anybody who has interest in this, try to look where you are, ask yourself the question that we are talking about. Are you feeling that this is where you feel that you can excel? If yes, we welcome you in this fraternity of giving assurance to organization and firms and any person that need to get this assurance. And for the future, there's future on this. So continue learning, continue exploring, and don't stop learning things. Learn different things, have different knowledge, apply this knowledge to specifically where you feel you belong. So this may not be your area, but it still can give you a perspective on how now your area looks like. So thank you again. And for any conversation, you can link with Hope and we can have an engagement. If somebody needs to clarification on something that may not be clear, you can also share with me some new knowledge. I'm welcoming them. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Michael, for taking us through IS audits extensively and also taking the questions during the sessions. During the session, thank you so much. I believe we now have a clear idea of what IS audit entails, the scope, the roadmap, and so on. Also, the different certifications you can take up if you want to major in this. The point of these sessions is to give you an idea on every kind of area in cybersecurity as much as we can and interact with professionals who are actually working in the field so that you can get a feel of what exactly you want to do, even with your Cyber Shuja certificate and even in your learning journey. So thank you everyone for your time, and I wish you all a good evening. Also, Michael, kindly share the slides so that I can share them with everyone. And those who missed the last session, the sessions are always uploaded on the Cybershuja YouTube page. Thank you. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone.